You got a lot of people who want crypto for cash and a lot of people who need cash for crypto, and there's a market need there.
I love it.
Amanda Wick,
founder of the Association for Women in Cryptocurrency and a former federal prosecutor,
joins us to discuss crypto regulation,
financial innovation,
and how diversity shapes the future of blockchain technology.
I think we need more female founders, and I would just say to any woman thinking about doing it, do it.
What is it for you that was like that pivotal moment where you're like, that's it, I'm going to sign the papers, I'm going to start the association?
I feel like part of it was ignorance because I had no idea how hard it would be, which is partially why I did it. There's some men having girl children who are looking around at the patriarchy and how the world really works, and they're like, this is unacceptable. We had people tell us to change the name of the association.
Welcome back to the Blockfuel podcast. Today we have Gabby Kusz, head of strategy at Blockfills, and Amanda Wick, founder and CEO for the Association for Women in Crypto. We also have Sean Ristow, our esteemed co-host of the Blockfuel podcast, and excited to jump in today. We have a unique episode where we get to bring in our good friend, Gabby, to be her first special co-host guest to the Blockfuel podcast, as well as rolling out her own show, which we'll detail later. Amanda is the perfect person to have on as her first guest, and thanks for joining us all the way from DC.
It sounded you were about to say something far, and then you're like, all the way from the East Coast.
It's far from
like,
me.
I hate to
On the
disappoint.
West Coast.
I'm in America. Yep. Everybody's always surprised when I'm in the United States. I'm like, I am actually American. I do technically live here. Yeah.
I know, but you're gone so much. It's hard to know exactly where to pinpoint you at. So
It's actually great for safety when you think about it. From an OPSEC perspective, nobody ever knows where I am, which is not a bad thing.
Is Florida still in the U.S.? I didn't know.
Depends on who you ask in Florida. And I never say where my parents are from because I just don't want anybody to know that. That's make the assumptions that you will. Different parts of Florida are like different countries. So it really depends where in Florida you're from.
See, up here in Chicago, everybody just thinks Florida that's where Mickey lives. And
that's the best part of Florida. That's the part we all claim is Disney. The most wonderful place on earth is in that state, and hopefully will remain there. Fingers crossed.
Love it.
So, Gabby, want to give you the floor, jump in, introduce yourself, a little bit of your background. You and Sean have known each other forever in Chicago. And then Amanda would love a little bit of backstory on you as well. And then we'll dive into some topics we have cooked up.
perfect. So thank you for the opportunity to guest host and to join Blockfuel. It's a great opportunity. I've obviously been a fan and been on the show as an interviewee a few times. So really excited to be contributing, and thank you. When we kind of spoke, we talked about who I would like to have on the show as a first guest. And I took a really hard look at my network and some of my colleagues. And the first person that I thought of was actually Amanda. And that was in large part because of the outsized impact that she's had on the crypto industry. A lot of the work that she's done, both from a policy perspective, as well as from a gender equity and inclusion perspective, but also just more broadly and leading the charge when it comes to responsible innovation. So I thought if there was one person that could kick it off and set a good tone for what I'd like to achieve with you guys, that Amanda would be it.
She's just trying to make me cry, so I'm like choked up. So
I know, I really
funny
will.
on the microphone. Trying to make me cry.
I think a lot of that comes to the story about how you got involved in digital assets and in the industry more broadly. And so maybe in addition to giving a quick thumbnail overview of your background, you could talk a little bit about how that aligns with your journey of getting into the digital asset space. And then I think moving into the decision to found the Association for Women in Crypto.
Yeah, it's a weird story. And I think it used to be, I think, less common. And now I think it's more common that a number of us that used to work in government, and I was a prosecutor at DOJ that got exposed to crypto, and I was a money laundering prosecutor. So I just had an entrepreneurial fellow who learned early on Silk Road. You got a lot of people who want crypto for cash and a lot of people who need cash for crypto. And my gosh, there's a market need there. So he was one of the first money launderers. Yeah. And that's how I got into crypto. And at the beginning, it was back then, I want to say 2012 or 2013, I can't remember. And it was definitely the feeling of, oh man, this is all criminal money. And then years go by and there's super cool things you can do with it. And you start to learn the tech and you're like, oh wow, like this could help the remittance market completely. And so you just start to see the value of the tech and realize, yes, criminals used it, but that was criminals use every technology first. They're always like the first to be
They're great beta
adopters.
testers.
They're brilliant. They're great beta testers. And so I got really into the tech and the software, and then unexpectedly ended up leaving the government, but went to Chainalysis for a year because we had been using their software tracing in the government for money laundering cases. So I knew that the folks over there. And it was very interesting going to the industry side. And I think it's always been like a weird fit because of where I started. And I know there's people in the crypto industry who are like, oh, she's not pro crypto. One guy once told me I still had my government hat on. And I was like, yeah, I think I'll always be against terrorist financing. I think that's not ever going to get rid of that. I feel like as Americans, but that's a discussion for another day. But it's been like it's always been like a fat man in a little coat kind of situation. Because when I came into industry, I always felt, oh, being former gov, you always are thought of as the gov. But I think to your point, it has completely shaped my view of responsible innovation because I talk with amazing, brilliant, wonderful founders all the time who are building amazing things. And the thing is, they're really good people. And they did not spend a bunch of their life looking at human trafficking, child sex abuse, drug trafficking, and the worst parts of humanity. They spend a lot of time in the best parts of humanity. So they're building these amazing things, thinking about the amazing things that wonderful people will do with it. And I'm like, let me show you somebody else in the world who will do something else with it. And my experience in responsible innovation is really just sometimes you just got to talk with people and say like, hey, have you thought about this and your product being used for this? It's not like they intend to build bad things. They intend to build great things for great people. They just don't know who else is out there who's thinking of horrible, creative ways to use their product for bad. And I think that conversation is where a lot of us who are former gov can actually help and contribute, is to be the voice in the room of a bunch of wonderful people who spend their time with wonderful people saying, let us tell you about some not so wonderful people who might do some terrible things with this product. And maybe we could just make it a little bit safer from the jump rather than later trying to bolt on some safety after people do terrible things with it. So I think that's the best summary. And then I started the Association for Women in Crypto mostly because when I left Gov, and I think Sean made this point when we were talking beforehand, it can be a bit of a broy industry a little bit. So maybe we create an association that militantly and actively works to include women more. And so there we go, the Unman Your Panel, the kind of, although my board doesn't want me to say militant, what is it? But they want active, proactive, something a little less in your face, which I'm working on, but I'm always evolving.
Do you have
growing.
a Shopify store for buying those hoodies?
We do actually. If you go to Women in, it's not Shopify. I'm not that
So,
tech.
doesn't matter.
I'm working on it. We started with I think Printify. I think that's like the low end Shopify, or I'm not sure. Printify, don't kick me off.
We love competition. So
Printify, you're
go with
amazing.
Printify.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be sponsoring.
No, absolutely not. But Shopify, if you want to let us on your platform, we're here. No, but we do have a merch page. So that's at womenincrypto.org. And my dad has the tie. He got that for Father's Day. There's a blanket. There's keychains. The sandals are popular. I think Gabby started the pencil skirt.
I did.
That is fire. So when she rocks that at conferences, people always ask about it. So she's like a walking ad for the merch.
Didn't you have that at Consensus, Gabby? I think so.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. It was
I
cute.
recall. Yeah, I remember.
It was actually really funny. We were both wearing it. We were both blonde. I'm like not a foot shorter, but shorter and heavier. And people would walk up and be about 5 minutes into a conversation with me and be like, wait, are you not Gabby Kusz? And I was like, no, but that's the greatest compliment I've had all day. She's actually across the room in the other Wick pencil skirt.
We were like,
Best compliment ever. I was like, there's nobody I'd rather be compared to and mistaken for than Gabby Kusz. Thank you so much. But she's right there.
Jody's pulling up below the merch now.
Yeah. Are you shopping?
Yeah, Sean, pull it up.
There's hats. There's all
kinds.
kinds of stuff. Yeah.
we'll get you some, Sean.
Yeah.
Here we go. All right.
So yeah, we just got out of Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
That's right. That's right.
Everyone loves visuals. So
Let's upsell. Upsell everyone.
And actually, it was my friend in college who designed our logo,
Gangster.
which was like the W Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And as soon as he sent it to me with all the different colors, I was like, bro, this is it. This is it completely. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
Might have to ask my daughter to get me that for the
perfect
holiday
stocking
coming up.
stuffer.
There you go. There's stuff for her too. I think I made like a blanket. There's like a bed blanket. There's all kinds of stuff.
Oh,
Flip
Oh,
flops.
that's
skirt.
nice.
Yeah.
Yep. There it is.
Love a good slide around the house.
Well, and I had a question for you. I think, at least for me, in some of the things that I've founded or participated in, there was always like a moment in time where, again, lots of different moments collected together that sort of leads you on a path. But there's almost like always one pivotal moment where you're like, this is the thing that's going to turn me on to founding or really doubling down on being a founder. And so I guess one of the things that I actually don't know the story, so it's a little bit maybe surprising, but what is it for you that was like that pivotal moment where you're like, that's it, I'm going to sign the papers, I'm going to start the association? What was that thing that kind of was the defining factor?
Oh my God, that's such a good question.
Thank you.
I feel like part of it was ignorance because I had no idea how hard it would be, which is partially why I did it. If I knew now what I knew then, I think I would have been really hesitant. But I was really lucky in that I was talking with my brother about it, and he said, because I said to him, I was like, I want to call it Women in Crypto because we'd actually had a Women in Crypto series at Chainalysis, and it was like a speaker series, and we wanted to build off that.
Remember.
And I was going to go buy womenincrypto.org and womenincrypto.com. And it was like really expensive. I think the two, because they were on the secondary market or something, I think it was like 10 grand or something.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really expensive. And my brother said, you should buy them because you've had a lot of great ideas. You remember the bubble tea shop in college that somebody later opened 2 years later and you didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I do remember the bubble tea shop 2000. Man, we would have made a killing. We were like, oh. And he was like, if you buy that and you spend all that money, you will not do it. Like you almost need to have such a financial investment that you'll be ashamed, embarrassed. It'll gig you into doing this and it'll force you to do it. And he was right. Like I bought the websites and I was like, I have these websites. I have to do something with it. And then there was actually a woman that I met who helped the International Academy of Financial Crime litigators or lawyers. She had helped them start their association. She invited me to speak at their group. And when I was talking to her about starting an association, she was like, I can help you. She's actually now like a psychologist. She's incredible. But she helped me put together a strategy plan and she was amazing. And so I think I got really lucky in that I felt like the universe put in front of me at the right time the people that I needed to get it off the ground. But I was also really lucky that when the universe sent me people, it's like that joke about the guy who's drowning and the universe sends the Coast Guard. God sends the Coast Guard, says it, and when he dies, he's, oh, I kept praying to you. I sent you the Coast Guard. I sent you great. And so like, I feel like there were all these people who came to me and I just was like, I hear what you're saying. But my brother was right. I think if you invest and you start something and you have to do it. And especially for women, because we're so hesitant to take that risk, right? We might be the primary provider and our partner is the one who's in the risky startup job, right? Or we may not have a partner and our entire life may be our income, which is in some ways even scarier. So there's a lot that goes into that. And there's all kinds of studies about women and risk, but I think we need more female founders. And I would just say to any woman thinking about doing it, do it. Because I think the thing is, one of my friends said, so what if you fail? You go back to being a successful prosecutor. You go back to being a chief of legal. You go back to just having a job. And I was like, when you put it that way, that doesn't, no, that's not. And I think some people are just better with the idea of failure. And I think women are not. And so we just need to be better with, try it. If you fail, so what? Look at Adam Newman. You could lose $1 billion and some white dude will give more white dudes more money, right?
Yeah,
So
Andreessen came back in for a second
I
round.
mean, like,
Wow.
how he tried to justify that, I was like, bro, get out. I can't even with a straight face pay attention to you right now. Bro's gonna bro, just admit it. The guy lost over $1 billion and you're only funding less than 2% of women founders. I can't look you in the eye right now. But we need to be better at that. Right? Like women I jokingly say we need to have all the skills of narcissistic sociopaths, but with good intent and good hearts. But that's real. Like it's very real. And so back to Gabby's question, I never thought about it, but I guess I owe this all to my brother. And I will call him later today and say thank you because I've never really said that to him, but for you gigging me and really pushing me and knowing me well enough to know I need something, like I needed that. It was great.
Great. And follow up on that, I feel like we've started to like tap into like this concept of male allyship. And maybe the original male ally, it would seem, would be your brother. I feel like we need to definitely reach out and thank him.
100%. Although I will say, I've talked about this some, and there were many male allies that helped me.
Yeah.
And it's why I'm obsessed with it, even though it's the Association for Women in Cryptocurrency and we're advancing women. We have men on our board, like Gabby knows she's on my board, like full disclosure. And I was adamant that we have men on our board. Our events are never women only. We actually invite men on LinkedIn to every event so that they know they're welcome, because otherwise they see the women thing and they think, oh, it's just for women. And they always inevitably end up bringing a woman with them, like as cover. And I'm like, that's great. The more the merrier. So yeah, our first sponsor, this guy, Glenn Pomerantz at BDO, was actually at that International Academy event that woman brought me to. And he was like, if you ever need anything, you call me. And I was like, actually, I'm starting this association. I called him like maybe a year later. And he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, this is what I'm going to build. And he's like, here's a check. And he just bet on me before there was anything, when there was just like, I think it was maybe even before the wall of 50 women. Like it was just,
Yeah.
he just bet on me. And that was the definition of sponsorship. And I still think him every time I see him. And he was like, you're one of the safest horses I've ever bet on. Yeah. And I just was like, oh my God, it's so nice, right? And Seth Ducharme stepped in and got us the podcast. We had the podcast that we do at Bracewell. Steven Sargent at Airdropped helped us with video production. Like just tons of men. That's not to say that the women aren't helpful. It's just, I think most men don't realize how wonderful it is when we don't have to help ourselves in the fight. And I remember when the male allies in the Unman Your Panel campaign, or Unman Your Panel is trying to eliminate the manel, like all male panels. And we had over 100 male allies in crypto last year on International Women's Day, and they all posted online. And so many women messaged me on LinkedIn to say, I woke up this morning to a wall of men trying to help. And it was the greatest thing ever. It was so nice not to be alone fighting this. And I just don't think men realize what a huge deal it is when they support. And when you guys were like, oh, we want to do this amazing thing and we're just going to step back, I was like, no, I like, let's do this together. We have to do it together. It's such a big deal to have you to say we want to include these women. It's a huge deal. And we need to recognize you and thank you for that, because it's a choice. It's not a given.
Oh, and I agree.
It's very educational too, and like the ways to like get involved. Like some people might say, "Oh, hey, it's a women event." It feels maybe if you're going to it, what are your intentions? Is it self-serving, or is it like, are you actually genuinely, authentically trying to help and get involved and do business just like you would at any other networking event? So I think it's just education piece. Being like hearing successful situations, just your experience at TRM with Ari Redboard, who is on the podcast. We love Ari. He's always a absolute pleasure.
Ari.
Ari,
Did he
yes,
correct
actually, he
you?
did tell us that.
I'm like a one-woman machine on that. He never corrects people. He finally did
He
a
corrected
post
us.
one
He
day.
did. He was
Did he? Okay. He's
So
getting
like we have
better
a
about
partner,
it.
Avi. So like that is always that A
I
vowel
know.
sound.
I do that too. I'm like, Ari. And then people are like, Ari. And I'm like, okay.
Listen, he didn't correct people for years. And so I was like, bro, you brought it on yourself. You got to start correcting people, right? Otherwise they feel it's not fair because there's 8 million Aries and there's
Yep.
one Ari.
Yeah.
So
That is,
yeah. But I think it's really funny because to your point, I remember we had this event in London and the entire room of women, I think there was like maybe 3 dudes. And this one lovely guy came up to me, and I've seen him at events and he's heard me talk about this. And he was like, I love that you tell people this story. And he was really embarrassed at the time, but he came up to me and he was like, is this what it's like for you at conferences? Just a room full of men, like it's just a handful of women. And I was like, it is actually. And it changed the way I contributed. Like I wasn't quite comfortable speaking because I was like, do I have the right to speak? Do I know? And we had this amazing conversation. And it was so great because it built empathy. Like the next time I was at a conference and I saw all these men, I was like, oh yeah, no, yeah. And so it's just great. Like we had this like wonderful thing. And I think when men come and they see and we're welcoming and they think, what would it be like if I wasn't the majority in a room and I was a tiny minority? And so I think the more that we can have these conversations, and you also raise a really good point, which is intent. And I remember this is related, but like you see sometimes people, especially when you're trying to be a racial ally, right? And people are like, oh, you and your white savior complex. And I'm like, I know that's not really what was happening. I was just trying to help And so I always tell people, if you have good intent, there's always going to be haters. And Stephen Sargent has taught me this, and he's wonderful at it. There are always going to be haters if you're doing something worth doing. So if you have good intent and you want to be somewhere to help women, to help people of color, to help inclusion, and somebody's got something crappy to say about that, F them. I don't care. Get out. There's just not enough people being thanked and acknowledged for wanting to help. And if that's why you want to be there, I don't care if you get it wrong. I'll take the inclination to help and we can get it right. But don't crap on somebody who's trying to help and it's coming from a good place just because it's not exactly the way you want, or it doesn't, like, just give people the benefit of the doubt. And so when men come to us, I've had men DM me on LinkedIn and say, I want to do this post. Does this seem okay? And they're afraid to help until they have somebody check if it's the right way. And I'm like, oh, dude, like, I love that you want to help. I hate that you were afraid to help without checking first. Like, that breaks my heart.
I think that speaks to like how sensitive of a society we live in now, though.
Yeah, it's
Like,
ridiculous. I will say
everyone's
that's the
jumping
part
on it.
about cancel culture and woke culture and identity politics and all that crap that I'm like, I'm sorry. I struggled for a long time pluralizing an individual and calling them they. Get off my ass, okay? I just had a problem with did I come around to it? Sure. But I'm not a bad person just because conceptually the whole binary, non-binary thing took me a while. As a gender advocate, when women tap out and want to be called they, them, I have a problem with it. I'm sitting here fighting for the gender that's losing. I've got boobs and I don't get to tap out because it's pretty damn clear what I present as. So we can have a discussion. I respect it. I'll come around to it. It's a respectful thing, but you got to be open to debating with people and hearing both sides. Because if you just shut it down and cancel people, oh, this whole America experience is going to turn into a dumpster fire, even more so than X has become. And it's fine if it stays on a social media platform. You can opt into that dumpster fire. But if our society and culture and everything, if that just proliferates, good God, that can't be the answer to this experiment. It can't. God, I hope it's not. But so when men like you come and say, how can we help? I'm like, oh, let's do it. Let's figure it out. This is awesome. This is awesome. That's all I need is how can I help?
Can I ask you, obviously you've talked to a lot of different people, you've had a lot of different experiences in this journey. What is, and maybe not a whole lot surprises you anymore, but what is one thing that has, and again, we'll take the dumpster fire turn and turn it towards something positive, but what is the thing that's like pleasantly surprised you the most in your interactions with people, in trying to like engender understanding? What has been like one of these, and maybe it's even through some of the research that you've been doing recently, what is something that was like really surprising to you in this?
I think it was that the Web3 like builder, like not all of it, but there are giant pockets in like the builder community where it's such a beautiful mentality of fixing things and making the world better. If you look at the ETH community, if you look at a lot of the builders, like I'll go to these things, and they're like, we want to decentralize things. We want to break these platforms that are ruining our world with algorithms. And a lot of these people come sometimes from TradFi, sometimes from Gov, sometimes from tech companies that are breaking the world, sometimes from VC companies that are breaking the world. You have a lot of people who see broken and they want to fix things. And having the conversation of what if we built inclusion in at the foundational layer instead of trying to bolt it on hundreds or thousands of years later, they're so open and receptive to it. And I really love that. When people ask me, why did you do women in crypto? Why do you focus only on inclusion in crypto, blockchain, and Web3? And I'm like, to be honest, it's people who are already open to the concept that the system is broken and needs fixing. And so they're open to fixing multiple things at once. But if you're talking to somebody who's still in TradFi, who's still in government, and they're sitting in that burning house saying everything is fine, trying to convince that person to fix inclusion is actually a lot harder. And so I've been just really pleasantly surprised that and girl dads. Something happened. I don't know if it was the Barbie movie. I don't know what happened in the last generation. But there's some men having girl children who are looking around at the patriarchy and how the world really works. And they're like, this is unacceptable. And they're some of our most militant members. Like, Sean, you have what, 3 girls, you said?
Yep.
Oh,
Three daughters.
I've got male members who are at every event. They're like, "How do I help?" They're tatting. I think they haven't shown me, but I'm like, somewhere there's a Wick tat somewhere, right?
I
Like
didn't go
Sean?
that far yet.
they're just
Sean?
like
You got to step it up.
Jackie, and I'm like,
I mean, I'll take it.
it's adorable. But like they look at the world that their daughters are stepping into, and they're like, "Oh my!" And the thing is, I'll never forget this guy who was at an event, and he came up to me and he was like, "Oh God, you won't believe when we did the facilitated networking and we had these 4 questions. This one dude like never got past the 3rd question, and then he started lecturing this woman about the answer to her 2nd question." And I was like, "Bro, really? You think she didn't know that? Does that happen? Like, have you ever seen that?" And I'm like, "Have you ever seen a man unnecessarily explain something to a woman? Have I ever seen mansplaining?" And he's like, "That's what that means?" Oh my God. Like he'd heard the term, but like until it sinks in, until you have the moment where you see a woman say something at a meeting and then 2 minutes later a guy says it and people are like, "Oh, Tom's idea is awesome." And you're like, "Beth had that idea literally 2 minutes ago. She said that he just repeated." Like until you see it, you think we're making up all this stuff and we're like just aggrieved victims that are just bitching about our lives. And I'm like, "No, bro, like when you see it, you'll get it." And the girl dads, the minute they see it, they're thinking about their daughter in a boardroom, a meeting, and they're just like, "Unacceptable. How do I fight the fight?" And I'm like, "I love you. Join me. This is great." So I think girl dads and just the magical vibe in crypto blockchain Web3 of there's absolutely downsides to tech, but like we can also use it to fix things, and let's fix all of the things. And I love those people. I love those people.
I agree. I think I had a strong role in East Chicago. And Sean, actually, hey, you and I spoke on a panel together at
We
East
did.
Chicago. Yeah, we did.
We-
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that there were a lot of people who are looking at how to make things better. And they're looking at a lot of different, perhaps like not unconventional ways to make things better. And so from their standpoint, it's the same thing around like intentional design. So if we're going to make things new, why not make it new in a different, more expansive way as opposed to like same old? I agree. I think that there's a lot of openness towards like broad thinking and that gender equity and participation and intentional design is all like a big piece of that. So
I think the thing that I wish people would remember is the reason we say intentional inclusion is because I think this is just a completely anecdotal stat pulling it out of my butt, but I just don't think that much of it is like it's unintentional. There's a reason it's called unconscious bias. Yes, if you go on crypto Twitter, the misogyny is like awful, but I always wonder if that's a lot of Russian and Chinese bots that just live to get my blood pressure up. In real life, there's tons of people who just don't realize, like I said, I have my own unconscious bias, ageism, right? Like all kinds of, we all have unconscious bias. So this idea that everybody's running around trying to keep women down, I'm like, no. If I asked you to throw a dinner party tomorrow, Sean, are you going to invite 5 strangers? Or are you going to invite the 5 people you know that aren't going to embarrass you? You're going to invite the people you know. So if all you know is one group or a type of group or like friend, you invite, when you guys started your podcast,
I think
did you
that's
invite-
also like comes down to like comfort because a lot of
Yeah.
people like I don't know. I think a lot of people are programmed to like they're scared to step out of their comfort zone, which is obviously why they don't like to your point earlier about starting a company. They're scared of failure because we live in a society where if you fail, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And when it's really not. And so I think it's a lot of stigmatism, I think, is really what it comes down to. And I think as we evolve as a culture and a country and all these different things, we're seeing things change huge. And there's always the opportunity to go backwards. But I think holistically, we've been going forwards. It's just some people want to go like from A to Z. And realistically, humans don't do that. Like, why has crypto adoption taken so long? Hello. How long did it take Apple Pay to come around? A long time.
Yeah, I will say crypto adoption would go a lot faster if the diversity in who was building it was better. Like you build a product by one person this is one of the things that we're really passionate about is we need way more women engineers, builders, developers. And that's a tough thing. It's a pipeline problem. like we just need more women going into engineering, comp sci, like all these things. Because I've got guys who call me all the time who are like, I need a woman engineer. We have a team of 10 men. It's like an echo chamber in here. And I'm like, I know,
Yeah.
bro, but I've got one woman engineer. She gets 8 job offers every day because every company wants. There's problems in that system. And it's hard because as long as people keep saying crypto is criminal money and it's not real, then it's really hard to get these really good women to leave their engineering jobs in TradFi or in these legitimate industries to come over to an industry that has just been crapped on no matter what it does. Everybody continues to look at it as like it's just speculation on crap coins. They refuse to look at stable coins. They refuse to look at the tech. They refuse to look at it as the future of digital finance. And if you just keep crapping on it, it makes it really hard for people who are less risk averse to leave their job at IBM or something and to come over to a Fireblocks, right? Fireblocks is an amazing company. And people are, oh, it seems risky. I'm like, it's a tech company like any other tech company. But because you put crypto on, we had people tell us to change the name of the association, take crypto out of it just because of the perception that crypto is bad. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, stop. And part of this is the media and how bad the media just constantly craps on the entire industry. But to your point, you're absolutely right. But I also think it's, we all want to be successful, right? And when you guys were putting together your podcast, you very first start, right? First step, Gabby went with me. She knows me really well. When you guys started, did you pick a stranger or did you pick somebody that you're like, they're not going to embarrass us? I think we'll have a good conversation. I think it'll get off to a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You pick, it's the other side of the coin of not failing is succeeding. And you pick the people that you think are going to help you succeed.
Yeah.
And all we're trying to do is get people to broaden their circles. Because to your point, maybe you have 5 people you think, okay, these are our 5 great guests. To get out of those 5, you go to Gabby. Who else should we have on this show that you know in your circle? And she's, oh, ask Amanda. She's not that bad. She makes not tacky jokes. Like she'll be okay. And you're like, all right, seems a little risky, but we'll bring her on, right? And now the circle gets bigger. That's intentional inclusion. It's not asking for unqualified people to get jobs they shouldn't have. It's not asking you to bring somebody crappy on your podcast, although we'll see if I ever get asked back. But, right, like it's just saying, hey, we don't know all the people. And rather than take the risk of asking some rando, do you have a good person that you'd suggest and broaden our circle? And that just doesn't seem like an unreasonable thing. Women, people of color, kind of underrepresented groups. We just got to broaden our circles.
Yeah. I feel like we could sit here for an hour and talk.
I know. You guys are really fun to talk
This
to.
is
I
awesome.
understand why people kill to get on your show.
It's now Gabby's show. So
Yeah, but people were killing to get with Gabby for years. So like,
yeah.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. And Gabby, we'll let you wrap it up. This is your ship to steer.
Thank you very much, Amanda. I really appreciate you coming on. And like I said, when I thought about who I wanted to bring on as an inaugural guest host, you were definitely my number one choice. I just want to thank you for sharing a bit about your experience, a little bit about what the Association for Women in Cryptocurrency is doing, and also to set the tone for what I hope will be a really fun run with Block Fuel. So
I
thank
really
you very
appreciate it. And Jody and Sean, I really appreciate you guys having faith and staying on. I know originally you were not sure, but I think the conversation was much better and funner for your input.
Oh, it was
And
that. This was awesome. Like I really love doing this,
Yeah.
and
It's a good time.
we're definitely gonna have to bring you back and bring a lot of the folks back.
well,
And of course, Gabby is gonna
Yeah.
obviously be the rock star.
yeah, I was gonna say get her before she's like huge and like the next Joe Rogan.
She already is a big deal.
That
so
will be
or
amazing.
I can't even track her down. Like I talk to her once a week now. She used to ping me every day.
Oh, I know. It's a week-long answer to my text, and I'm
You're a
bunch
big
of
deal.
answers.
You're a big deal, over there. Yeah,
much. So
Block
much
Fuel.
crying.
But we knew her when. That's what I say. I'm like, I knew her when, and
I
we're
knew
in our
her-
closets matching
Yeah,
skirt.
back in the day. Back in the day, I knew her. But anyway,
Well,
thanks
thank
for
you
coming
all for
on.
thinking of me. This was hella fun, and I really appreciate y'all.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Amanda.